we have been talking, right?
Yes.
And many times we fill a variety of forms for myself, and sometimes basically the with news that come up from the police also.
Yes.
The categorization, the options what have been given, like we have been asked to identify our race,
Yes.
and I do not have a problem in giving my race as long as the categorization is correct.
Okay.
Okay, for example, the option there is given South Asia.
Yes.
Okay, and to be very honest, there is no South Asian race. There is no.
Okay.
There is no, because South Asia is a geography.
Yes.
It's a geography.
Yes.
True. I mean, for example, calling somebody European, that doesn't. I mean, like European has several different type of races exist there. Calling somebody Canadian, well, several races exist in Canada.
Okay. So in order to have this conversation, we have to break down a few different things. We have to separate race, and this is the identity piece that we're including in our strategy. Race, ethnicity, culture, nationality. So Canada's a perfect example. We're all Canadians here in this room.
Yeah, nationality.
That's our nationality.
Yeah.
Right? My family is originally from St. Lucia, and they're black, of African descent. That is my race. My ethnicity and my culture are West Indian. And what often happens is people end up conflating and realize, and this isn't right or wrong, but they end up living their true identity. So a perfect example is those from the Jewish community, right? They would be classified as being white European, but their collective identity as a Jewish diaspora is Jewish. Same thing as you say with regard to being Hindu.
So now I'll go there now.
Now wait, just give me 1 second. So these categories that are here are based on recognized categories for race. It doesn't mean, and if you see to your question, Neil, in question 22, if you see question 22,
Yeah, I opened up here.
where it says South Asian,
Yeah.
at the end it says etc. So India is still going to fall into the South Asian racial category. Yeah, just 1 second. It's still going to fall into, it's still going to fall into for racial classification. But part of what we're doing with our strategy is to address the nuances and the significance that that has to you within the Hindu community. And when this is part of the feedback. So when we are going to do collecting, we're going to make sure that it's reflective of all of that. Because race is one aspect of that, but identity. And that's what I think we're talking about. So I think we're saying the same thing.
So I think let me complete what the whole
Please.
train of thoughts there.
Please.
So Hindu population in Indian subcontinent,
Yes.
and I don't call South Asia, we call Indian subcontinent, that part
Yes.
of the land.
Yeah.
It's more than 1 billion,
Yes.
right? If you look at Peel has a significant Hindu population.
Yes.
True?
Yes.
Hindu is a civilization, it's a faith,
Yes.
it's a culture,
Right.
right?
Historically, Dravidian culture and into
Let's be there, okay? So, however, Hindu is not included in the race categorization. We don't want the etc. We don't want that etc. We should be included under etc. Being a more than 1 billion population and significant population in P.
Yes.
True?
Okay.
So our ask here, our request here is that under race category,
Mhm.
under faith category,
Mhm.
under culture category,
Mhm.
like we do not want that, we don't want basically myself to be identified as a South Asian anywhere,
Mhm.
but rather I would call myself Hindu wherever you can do.
Mhm.
And that is where the biggest hesitation
Mhm.
me and my community has
Mhm.
for giving survey, because I find it myself like you are categorizing me as South Asian, but I am not South Asian.
Mhm.
I do not recognize South Asian.
Mhm.
True. Now I have a second aspect of that, and why we need that,
Mhm.
right? See, now I am part of a community organization. We run a lot of volunteer programs.
Mhm.
Now for me, I want to find out how many percentage of Hindus are there, let's say, in prison, so that we can run some rehabilitation program for them.
Mhm.
How many Hindus, let's say, are involved in drunk driving, so that we can run some program for them. But right now, if you give me South Asian, these many South Asian are doing this, is irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, because South Asian could be from Muslim community, it could be Sikh community, it could be,
Anywhere.
right? And,
Multitude.
and it doesn't help me
Yes.
to run any program, to do anything for my community, right? We have temples. Via temples, we can run a lot of programs, but we cannot because the data is not helping me. My ask here is that, so everywhere what categorization we want, and for Canada, where I think third population of Hindu community is there, like the
Understand Canada.
right? So now what we are doing that is a community which is on population wise number 3 in Canada, right? But we are not giving that community an option to categorize correctly, identify correctly. So our ask here, when we came here, is to make sure that it
It's
gets
included.
categorized correctly.
Okay, so can I?
No South Asian for us.
Can I
We don't want
res-
to be categorized South Asian.
Can I respond?
Yes.
Okay. I think we're saying the same thing, because if you remember at the very beginning when we started the open address, this is not a race-based data strategy, identity, and let me tell you what I mean by that. I'm assuming you're above 20, is that fair? I'm not gonna ask you your age unless you wanna share with the group. Right?
43.
You're 43. You're a 43-year-old man who's Hindu. What else do you want to tell me about? You wear glasses,
Yeah.
right? You may be left-handed, you may be
Brown.
right-handed. You got it. What does brown mean?
My skin color.
Okay, and what is that? Is that a race? Is that a culture? Is that ethnicity? What is that?
Skin color.
Okay, I know the color of your skin.
Yeah.
So that's the extent of it for you? No, but that's the extent of it for you. Like all the color of your skin means for you is that it's brown. Is that fair?
I don't think
Yeah.
brown
Okay.
categorizes. No, I don't think brown is.
Okay, but let me tell you where I'm going.
Yeah.
All of
Brown is
those
not a
things,
color.
all of those things form your identity.
Yeah.
Brown, no.
You could be someone who's born in India, Muslim,
Yeah.
right? Female, 17 years old. All of those things form that individual's identity.
Yeah.
For the purpose of us collecting as a starting point,
My question is that if I was born in India, right, and I go to India, I'm black. I know I'm black.
Yeah.
Of African descent, but I was born in India.
Yeah.
Then my parents was, what would you categorize me as? An Asian, or would you categorize me as a black person? What would you categorize me?
Okay, I can answer the question. Okay, so you're saying that you are a person born in India, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, if I want to categorize myself, I will say that okay, yes, I am an Indian and Hindu.
yes, but
That's it.
no, but
Nothing very complicated.
Well, you see, this is the whole point about identity. What that means to you, so Omar's question is, his nationality would be Indian, his race would be black, and whatever his religion is, all of these form identity. What you're asking is for us to make sure that we differentiate
Which
and
is
capture,
good.
and
He
that's
has the option. I do not have an option to choose Hindu in your
Okay.
list of the things.
But
That is, I'm asking.
but
Give me an
Vijay,
option.
what I'm telling to you, what I'm
There
telling
is
you.
others.
No, but hang on,
There is
just-
there.
We don't want to be categorized
No,
under
one
others.
second, one second.
They were working on it.
No.
But Vijay, what I'm saying
not
to you,
the-
no, I think what we said at the very beginning is this is for us to hear because identity is key in this.
Yes.
And part of that is your identity. So what you're saying is under this, I'm gonna get right to you in one sec, is that you wanna see, and that's the identity aspect of race and identity-based data. We're saying the same thing.
I think
At
it could be
this-
sub-categorization.
But I'm telling you that
no,
we are
no
going to-
others, no etc. for us. For 1 billion plus people.
But not just you, what about all the different people from Asia, from China, from Japan, that might be
Agreed.
Shintos or Buddhists, right?
I'm not disputing that.
I know.
I'm saying that is, you are giving a South Asian option,
Wait,
and you are asking me to
just give me
categorize
30
myself South
seconds,
Asian.
15
right?
seconds.
But before
Sir,
you discuss,
no,
she's
sir,
been waiting.
Sorry, sir, she's student, I was teacher before. Sentence 1, question 22 about the East South Asian, which is my community, that area, I
Yes.
validate, that is correct. Regarding the next South Asian, I don't know, that's Indian, Pakistan, even sometimes I can't distinguish who is who. I don't know, leave to you. My second point is, this is the survey for the policing, not for the community service, which you mentioned that your focus. This survey is for the policing, is for the law enforcement. That is the old fundamental background, how they come up this with the expert, the specialty, which area, how we name them, how we categorize them. They are not based on the culture, social service, how we serve the community, how we serve their need. No, this survey is come with the fundamental law enforcement and policing practice. That's my point.
But before that, the young lady's been
Sorry,
waiting.
jump up. You say.
Let's give her a chance.
Okay, I'm just gonna preface with like I love data. I love data collection. I work with Halton Multicultural Council, so I work in Halton, but I live in Peel, and so I've definitely been on both sides of like not seeing myself in surveys and not being able to choose exactly what describes me, and I've been on the other side where writing a survey to include every single person can be very challenging, and I think in this situation, a nice compromise would be just like a box where you can write down if you don't agree with some and there are those options for certain
is,
questions,
yeah.
but I think to just if you click other and then have that box presented to you to explain what that other is to you, but I think it's identity means something different to everybody. So for example, like I hear everything you're saying and like it's 100% valid. I'm Hindu, but it's interesting because you identify as Hindu, but I think I would first identify myself as South Asian, which is fine. Like we identify very differently, and it's because everybody comes from very different walks of life, and I think it means something different to everybody, and it's impossible to include everyone.
And the only thing that I'm gonna actually go back and show you something that's gonna make a perfect segue into that. And this is gonna be one of the biggest issues I didn't get into initially. Oh, I don't know what I did. Could you just bring that back up for me? Is to the point that was made here, officer perception. When we're collecting race and identity-based data, our officers have to be able to look at you, and in some of the collection strategies, remember when I spoke about how a multitude of ways we're collecting the data? The officer needs to be able to look at you like in a use of force scenario. They're not allowed to ask you, and they have to be able to satisfy a category. But the other side of that coin is, how do you identify? And your self-identification, and I'll show it to you in the slide. If you can just go back forward to the beginning, and I'll tell you why that's important. To your point, you see right at the top there, officer perception and self-identification. Now what we're talking about, and I validate that, and like the young lady said, your identity is part of who you are.
Yep.
We can't get away from that. But let me ask you this, Vijay, because there's an interesting question for you. What would you say if we didn't have South Asian here and we had India? What would you say then?
I wouldn't choose either of them.
I know
would
that.
choose only Hindu.
Because I heard
That's
you
what I'm
arguing.
saying.
I heard you arguing with Neil. But my point is,
No.
you see? Do you see how even amongst yourselves you have a difference of opinion? See how even amongst yourselves you have a different opinion? The point is that this doesn't have to be controversial. What we're trying to figure out as a collective and as an organization is how do we meet everybody's, to your point, and we have the abilities, because you want to know how many Hindus are affected by your example. You said that may be incarcerated, that may be differentiated, and we can do that.
His feedback
This is great feedback.
His feedback is different. His feedback is different. My feedback is different. My feedback is specific to question number 22. I'm pointing out a glaring mistake in which you have missed out India in South Asia. South Asia is a region. In South Asia, we have.
Is India in
four
South
major
Asia?
countries. Sorry?
Is India in South Asia?
Yes, of course. Don't you know that?
That place is
I
not-
do know that. That's what I'm saying. Is it says etc.
Okay, so that's my
the
feedback.
biggest country you have
once
seen,
again,
etc.
okay.
biggest country
In
in
South
the
I
Asia,
see. Yeah.
South Asia, India is the largest country in terms of size, in terms of population,
Right.
1.2.
Economy.
How can you miss out India and you want me to put it as a glaring mistake? It has to be corrected.
I don't think we missed it. I think it's what I think what you're saying.
How can you not
I'm
miss
sorry,
it?
just I think we are just right on this point, and you can discuss later on.
Yes,
And
I think
we are
that's
just
right.
That's the
wasting
feedback
our
we need
time
to
in this
be
matter.
corrected,
I'm
yeah.
sorry,
We
gentlemen.
haven't. We haven't.
That's
Please,
it, that's it.
there are so many
That's
other
it.
concerns we have to discuss.
let's move
Yes,
ahead.
can I
Let's
hear
move
from the
ahead.
lady?
Okay, let's take it to a practical knowledge. He, as a police officer, approaching me, asking my identity or the race I belong to, I might link this to a racism. So sitting here, we have to break this, that this officer here is not gonna judge me or is not gonna treat me different, he's asking my race. Is that, I mean, I am linking this to racism. This is me linking this to racism. So they approaching us, like a police officer approaching us to ask that, they're not here to say, okay, you're Indian, you're Hindu, I'll treat you different. that's your self-identification. The second point, there you have an opportunity to say, okay, I am Hindu, I am South Asian is whatever the geographic point or wherever, but I am Hindu and I belong to this category. There lies an opportunity to say that every Indian is not a South Asian as you believe.
Yeah.
So there breaks the racism thing. I mean, there we are linking into race or a certain category, right?
Right.
But
But
I
there's
think
space-
we have
there's
to,
space
or
for all of it.
we can just make an awareness. If a police officer approaches you asking a race or your category, then he's not there to prove a racism thing, but he might help you in a different way or above and beyond, right?
So if we've heard anything collectively, this is an important piece for the Hindu community, but even amongst Hindu community, people are identifying differently.
Yeah, so then you have given those options.
Yeah,
correct?
we will.
My point is that,
That's a critical
like,
piece.
for my community as a community organization, for me to help my community, I am not getting the data what I want.
You understand that?
And number two is, like, anytime, whenever we want to answer anything, and I'm sorry, I think for you, for some people are getting angry because same conversation we are having again and again like a broken record. But what we really want is that the correct categorization option for one of the largest community in Peel, and we are not having that. So give us the option. That's what I'm asking for.
I've heard that and I acknowledge that and I'm telling you we can do that.
Yes.
But you also will realize we're starting today to hear that. Now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna think the gentleman there, I don't know your name, sir.
No.
Did you have another question?
No, I was not having.
Observation.
Asking. We can point out and we can discuss this later on.
Sure.
There's so many other issue.
Yep.
Where, that's why.
Sure, certainly.
Yes,
Who is
very,
next?
very good.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You wanna go?
Sir, I have a few questions.
Yes.
The data concern, you don't have any option, but if I don't want to